Hi, I'm Grop. This is Grop Life. This is my 2025 Road Glide. Let me move these out of the way so you can actually see the bike. Okay, that's better. This is my 2025 Road Glide. Those were two giant boxes of parts for this bike. The first box of which we will be opening up and swapping out these handlebars, because the stock ones are very comfortable, but it's time for an upgrade and get a little bit more performance. If you read the thumbnail or title down below, you already know it's Thrashing. So we're gonna dive into that first smaller box, guess what is in the much larger box, and leave your guesses down in the comments below, and we'll open it up at the very end of this video and let you see what's coming for the bike as well. So stick around to the end to see that. Now let's open that smaller box and check out the Thrashin Supply hardware. I decided to go with the 9.5-inch pullback risers paired with the high bend bar, as well as 1-inch extensions for the risers and solid bushings. So the first thing to do is to put a center jack down. Get the front wheel off the ground, that way it's easier to move the steering tree back and forth while doing the install. So now the handlebars move freely. It'll be a lot easier to get in and actually mess around in here without having to worry about not having handlebars on it for a few minutes. So next up, we gotta pull the nacelle off. First, we gotta take off the bezel around the key, and then undo bolts on the side and a screw right up here up top. I want to use a plastic pry tool to pop this off. Next, we'll come in and get these screws and the rear one out. So we'll have to move the forks here and then get these side bolts off and then split the nacelle open. And the nacelle is now off. Once the nacelle is off, it is time to start taking things apart. As far as undoing these connectors that run the wires up to your handlebar controls, and then moving on to taking off the controls themselves and handlebars. So first, let's go ahead and just disconnect these electrical wires. Once you get the wires undone, there's Torx bits here on the side to remove the brake line and clutch line, as well as a small hex to pull off this grounding wire, which will ground back to itself, and then move on to taking the controls off. And it is a T27 bit right down in here. Next, I'm gonna do what you've probably been screaming at the camera the whole time that I haven't done yet, and cover this tank up with some microfibers. Then we're gonna get these hand controls off. Now that this is covered, we'll go ahead and get the clutch off as well as the brake lever. For that, you just need a T27 and pop these two bolts right off the perch. As well as there is a connector here on the back of your clutch and on your brake. You kind of have to squeeze in, push in and pull out. Let's find the once that's free, you can kind of bring your clutch over and just gently set it down here on the tank. Now, leaves this hand control open and able to move around. And we'll be able to take it off in just a second. Let's go ahead and get the brake line off. And again, just like the other side, it's a T27 and it comes right off. Now the brake line and clutch line are just sitting here resting on the tank, and everything is disconnected to where we can now go on and take these hand controls completely off. We are going to take off the 2 bolts. Well, actually, these bolts stay in. They have a little C-clamp holding them on, so you don't have to worry about pulling them all the way out. Just use a T20 to remove the hand controls. And there's 2 bolts on the back as well as a guide bolt, kind of keeps it in this range. Undo those and then this will slide all off as one big piece. And just like that, comes right off. You do have this connector here on the clutch side. And that's the only one connector you have to pop out. So be careful with it and push it down and pop it out. And then all is one, the whole thing slides right off of the handlebar. And you have your dummy throttle cable and hand grip. Sits right in. So now we'll just go take these and set them to the side. And the throttle side comes off exactly the same. Again, T20 or T20 bolts. You just have, I think, one more connector inside of this than you do on the other side. And again, just need a small screwdriver to help pop it out. Throttle pops open. You do have the additional connector on this side for your throttle by wire. Once those are disconnected, it all slides off as one piece, and you can pull the throttle right out. Now that we have the controls off, let's take the top clamp off and remove these bars. And that you will need a 1/4 hex. And if you're doing this by yourself, you do want to position yourself to where your body is kind of holding up the bars so they don't just slam down and hit your tank. And last one, top clamp comes off. Bars are off, pull the wires out through, and there's the stock handlebars. With the stock handlebars off, we are left with the riser. So now we are gonna get up under the bike and break the bolts and pull these risers off from underneath. A lot of people will do it by taking the top clamp off. I think there's enough room and accessibility to do it without having to go through that, because I really just don't want to mess with the top clamp today. So let's get under the bike and pop this riser off. So now it's a little bit tight to finagle this up in there. With the wheel up, you want to go ahead and take your knee and put it all the way over to the side. That way it exposes the bolt. It's a little bit of a hard angle to get at. I don't have any swivel heads where it would help, but that side's done. Now let's move over to the other one. Then you just reach up in there and undo it with your hand. A whole bunch of rusty water came out with it. I don't like that. Now that we've removed the original stock bars and risers, it's time to put the new solid mount bushings in, which the Thrashin Supply kit does come with black and chrome, so you can decide which side or which color you want to have on top of your top tree. I'm going to go with chrome to be on top of mine. I did choose to get the 1-inch extension for the risers to give it a overall of 10.5-inch rise with pullback. So those come with long bolts. One thing you will know is that the washer that comes in the kit is too thick for the 2024 and up road glides. So you do actually need to either order the other kit that they have with a bolt and washer, or go to your hardware store and find a thinner washer to put on it. I went to the hardware store and got a thinner washer for $2. So let's go ahead and start fishing this through. Takes a little bit of finagling, and then you can get that bolt to go right in. Turn it back and it'll hold it in place. Take your top bushing and put it over. Now you are ready for the extension. The rounded part of the extension does go onto the outside. And of course, before we put these bolts into the risers, we do want to put a little bit of red Loctite on it, because we don't want these going anywhere, and it's not likely they're ever really going to come off at the bike again anyway. So let's put a little dab of that on. And that should be plenty for that side. Then you take your riser, right now it's just to kind of get it on there a little bit snug, and then we will tighten it up more once we put the top clamp on. Now we move over to the other side and repeat. Now they're on there, you can still kind of move them and adjust them a little bit. So we're going to put the top clamp on to make sure that they come out square, and then we're going to torque down the actual risers. And Thrashing does provide nice APR hardware to go on these clamps. And you want to put the top clamp on so it gets square, so you're not fighting the bars or put the risers on crooked. Now that does bring everything square and into place, because there's no more movement with the risers, so they can't twist around. I'm gonna have to get all my fingerprints off these once I get done installing. So now let's grab the torque wrench and torque down the bottom. You always want to refer to your owner's manual or service manual when torquing things down and make sure you have the right torque specs. From what I have looked up, it shows that Harley wants between 30 to 40 foot-pounds of torque on the riser bolts. So we're going to set the torque wrench and then get back under it and torque them down. With your stock bars, first thing you're probably going to want to do is come onto the bottom and remove these tags so it'll make it easier for them to fish through the bars. Now we'll pull the wires out towards the ends of the bars instead of the center because the connectors are smaller on that end. Just like that. Clutch side is out. And now the throttle side. So we can take the stock handlebars and toss them to the side. Next, you move over to the high bend bars, or whichever bars you decided to go with from Thrashing, but I went with the high bend, and slowly try and fish these wires back down and through. Then you want to go into the hole that is closest to the bends. Sometimes you just need to actually use a little string and a washer and help give it a nudge. Run it through the bar. This is more so just to give it a little bit of a tug when it gets to that bottom bend so it comes on through. You don't want to pull on it hard because you don't want to mess up the wires or the connectors, but this will give it just enough to help. And now the throttle side is through. Pull your string off. We'll see if we need it on the clutch side or if it'll go in without. And without the string on the clutch side, it goes through no problem. Awesome, now we have the wires completely run through the bars and ready to put the bars on the bike and start buttoning things back up. One more thing before we put the bars on the bike is we're gonna take this wire loom and put it over the wires just to kind of clean it up a little bit and give it a bit of a more finished look once they're on the bike. And this is just a 1/2-inch expandable braided wire loom. Now we'll bring the handlebars in, eyeball it slightly, put the top clamp on, hold the bar with your body, kind of get it even. And we're just going to snug it down for now. We'll put Loctite on these once we get it more into a position that we're going to leave it at. Because for right now, we're just getting it snug and on there so I can set it for where I want my handlebars to actually sit and where my hands are going to rest. Now they're currently down there and on snug. so we can start putting the hand controls back on and then line up to where we want to actually have the bars. So next, let's put the hand controls back on. The clutch slide does slide back on just like we took it off. You do want to get your grip back on. Right now I am going to be running the stock grips until I decide which grips I actually want to buy. And you just need to put the one plug back in on this side. And again, this goes back on with a T20, which are attached and in there. So you just kind of have to run them back in. All right, now that hand control is back on and ready to put the clutch back on. You want to make sure and plug it back up on the bottom here. And of course, the perch bolts go on with a T27. We're going to leave those just loose enough to where we can fine tune them as well once we get everything put on here. So now let's move over to the other side and get the brake lines back on. Then next we get the brake lever back on. And those are on. Now we'll plug the wires back up and then set everything down and lock it all down in place. So let me hop on here, move things around a little bit. Bar actually feels pretty good where it's at. Let's get these clamps locked down for the perches. All right, those aren't going anywhere. So now let's pull these out one by one, put some Loctite on them, and we are set to go. Let's wipe down the bars. It has gotten hot in here and I am sweating. Pull this bike outside and take a look at it in the light and go for a ride. See how these handlebars feel. All right, so first initial thoughts on these handlebars is the bike does feel substantially more nimble. They're pretty comfortable at the height. I may adjust it a little bit after I ride some. And after we get back to the shop and look inside the big box, I may need to adjust these handlebars a little bit. Have you figured out what's in the big box yet? We'll check it out once we get back to the shop. About to come up on a nice little twisty road and really kind of put the bars to the test, but right now it feels so much more nimble and easy to kind of sling this bike around, which is crazy, especially for a 830-pound motorcycle. Not a lot of extra vibration in the bars with being solid mounted bushings like I was expecting it to be a little bit more noticeable as far as vibrations, but the bike is still very comfortable. Man, it does just lean right into the turns now. A lot more feedback coming through. Very direct. where the stock handlebars with those rubber bushings, everything felt like it lagged a little bit. Now as soon as you turn in, it is doing it. This is nice. Well done, Thrashin. Slow down and let this Nissan get on up ahead a little bit. All right, let's get into this turn and see how it feels. Day, everybody's out riding their bikes and filming. Now for the 90-degree turn. Let's see how it feels coming through here. Like butter. That's great. Now that I'm back in the shop, I'm gonna wrap up this video and say that the Thrashin Supply bars and risers are excellent. The quality on them is great, the chrome looks amazing, and the handling that it has given to this bike and improved it over a already good bike is pretty crazy. I'm really happy that I went with these. Now, if you have stuck around this long in the video, you're probably wondering what's in the giant box. So let's see. Lepera. Gonna be putting a new seat on this bike in the next video, so stay tuned. That video will be dropping soon. I'm gonna be putting the seat on the bike and heading down to Savannah, Georgia for a day trip to test out the bars and the seat. So tune into the next video to see which Lepera seat I got. Let me know your thoughts on the Thrashin Supply setup and on Lepera. Let me know your thoughts on the Thrashin Supply setup with the bars and risers down in the comments below. And give me your guesses on which Lepera seat you think I got. And if you haven't already, please smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when videos come out in the future, like the video on this seat, because I'm going to do a little bit of a long review on it before I drop that video. And until then, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video.